we
Uh-huh.
have to be at home at 10 p.m. Um,
That's impossible in Chile.
yeah, it's kind of impossible. We are having a workshop, a workshop on the studio with people, but it is at the. We're not doing it inside. We are doing it outside.
Uh-huh.
So we have fresh air and all that stuff. And the workshop starts at 8, and at 9:30, I said every day, okay, we're finished, go out.
Go, 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 go,
Go
go.
home, go home. Yeah, because I don't want anyone to
Yeah.
be catch up for the
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. I bet you have to pay a fine or something. Must be, yeah, must be really tough.
Yeah, there you can see me, really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
now I can really see you. And you can
Great.
see me.
Yeah.
I have COVID hair. This is the last of Dionysus.
Oh, I was watching the trailer of Dionysus yesterday, the 1 minute trailer, and I said, "Oh fuck, I really wanted to see this show."
Oh, it was great.
And
It was a good
and
show.
I get post, "Oh fucking coronavirus, I couldn't see the show."
Yeah, we had just opened. It was just so, we had just moved there. We had bought so many groceries for staying for 2 months. So we
Wow.
gave one guy stayed with his family for 3 months. He stayed in Minneapolis with his kids and wife, and so we gave Sam all of our food. And suddenly we're back in New York, and then began the strangest 9 months. So strange. But it's the one thing we've learned, and is the, the whole journey is really about figuring out this new, whatever the obstacle is, that's the material.
Yeah.
That's what you have. That's your material, right? To make your work. So these new parameters and limitations are part of that material. It's taken me a while to see it that way, and I don't mean to be childish or, you know,
Mm.
shallow about it. Um, but that's my job. That's really my job, is to figure out how to persevere and how to make it productive, um, and how to be a bridge to the next time, but not just a bridge for people to walk across, something really pleasant, like to have pleasure, to
Yeah.
figure out now how to actually have pleasure in your work, making your work, training to make your work. And that's a really creative act right now for everybody. I'm still experimenting, but I'm so lucky because I come with these strong a value system and a strong lifestyle that I can. Oh, now I can. They're not just what my training. Now it's who I am, and I was given that. It's not. I'm not saying how wonderful I am. These were gifts I got from other artists, and now it's my turn to figure that out. How I find the moment, how I meet it. As artists, we are actually, that's our bigger function, is we act as the consciousness of the moment. That is whatever form that takes, whatever form. So it's, one's life as in the arts is finding the form that best represents and best accesses you to being part of that consciousness. And consciousness is a very complicated thing in terms of human beings, right?
We haven't even started, and you're already inspiring us with your words. Alien, oh, it's so great to hear you.
Oh, it's so good to talk to you, Fernando.
Thank you very much. So we are going on live right now on Facebook. So I'm going to present you and do all that stuff.
Okay, great.
I will start speaking in Spanish and then I will change to speaking English with you.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry I don't speak Spanish.
No, don't worry, don't worry. I will translate you what I'm saying, don't worry.
Okay.
Bueno, hola a todos y todas, bienvenidas y bienvenidos al último Prácticas Corporales de este año. Soy Fernando Montanares, director de programación del Centro MB2 para la Experimentación de las Artes en la ciudad de Arica. El día de hoy, 30 de diciembre, tengo el honor profundo de presentar a nuestra última invitada en este programa para hablar sobre una de mis pasiones, algo que he aprendido con el tiempo y también gracias a ella, nuestra invitada, le debo tanto y así tanto como le debo en mi formación artística, también la admiro. Me refiero a Ellen Lauren, quien es la codirectora artística de City Company, actriz, ha participado con la Scott Company en Japón durante varios años y bueno, una trayectoria artística increíble, profunda, larga, inspiradora y tantas cosas que, bueno, yo creo que todos los artistas que estamos en el mundo del entrenamiento, pensando en el teatro como una herramienta de transformación social, escucharla va a ser un gran aporte a nuestras carreras. Así que bienvenidos y bienvenidas a todos y todas. Les quiero dejar en claro que si desean escuchar la traducción al español de la conversación que vamos a tener, porque en Facebook Live solo podrán escuchar el audio en inglés, pueden entrar a la reunión en Zoom, donde hay una intérprete, Daniela Pérez, está haciendo la traducción al español de la conversación. Así que sean bienvenidos y bienvenidas. Ellen Lauren, welcome. Thank you for being here. I'm
Thank
so
you.
honored, you know. I owe you a lot of my artistic training. I also admire you a lot. I'm always saying it to you. So thank you very much for accepting this invitation and being here with us today.
It's my great pleasure. Thank you so much, Fernando. Any chance to be in the room with you, even in this format, is a great pleasure. What a wonderful way to end the year as we wrote to one another and look to the future.
Thank you very much, Ellen. Yes, well, we will writing us during the whole year for different things, and now to end this virtual conversation with a live session, it's great. So
I hope I'm a Joe Haku. I hope I send it off and not end it.
Yeah, Ayohaku, you're so right. Well, I was telling the people in Spanish a little bit who you are and what you do, but I would like to start asking you, who's Ellen Lauren? Can you tell us who's Ellen Lauren?
Oh my goodness. Oh, this is such a self-conscious question. I'm not honestly sure, you know. Virginia Woolf, the great artist of the early 20th century, writer, she says it's so difficult to describe any human being, and I find that true certainly about others, let alone the self. So I essentially, in a nutshell, elevator pitch, I guess I would say that I was a middle class, upper middle class, white kid with a military father and a mother who was an athlete. She was an equestrian, very highly trained horsewoman. My parents, among other things, my mother raised horses. I grew up in that world. I moved a great deal, so I had to be incredibly flexible or snap. I had to be, you know, when you move a lot as a kid, because of the military in my case, you either become the class clown or you have a lot of issues and troubles and become incredibly introverted. And I became a little bit more of an extrovert, a little more of a class clown, at least for the most part. I think I had some rough years in there in my early teens, moving school to school to school. But the one thing I also was consistent in my youth was that I also, following in my mother's footsteps, I was a trained equestrian. I was competitive. I was moving up in the ranks into the Junior Olympics, and riding and looking at a professional career in equestrian eventing something to do with the equestrian world, training, riding, teaching. And I right at the cusp of where I needed to make that choice of moving into a more professional relationship to that world, I left it, and I left it very suddenly, and I left it like overnight. I left it, breaking many people's hearts, most of all my mom's. And because I had this thing that we all get somewhere mysteriously, where we need to investigate what it means to stand up in front of other people and act out a story and collaborate. You know, early on in your youth, you don't really have any identifying principles. It just feels good, or it feels right, or it's fun, or you meet incredible misfits like yourself. So I was drawn to that, and I left the horse world very suddenly. I went up into the mountains of West Virginia with my money, the little money I had won in my competition, and I bought a little cabin. And long story short, I met a group of people that were involved with a great, great teacher at that time, Viola Spolin, who was in some ways in the US, the mother of in the improvisation. She wrote a wonderful book, Improvisation for the Theater. And her son, Paul Sills, followed in her footsteps. I caught the tail end of that energy of that group and joined them. I was quite young. They were a little older than me. This is, you know, we're talking late 60s, hanging out in the mountains, doing some drugs, being hippies, making theater. But there was something deeply serious about the conversations, and the drugs were recreational. And from there, I went on to get an early undergraduate degree in theater. It was quite good training, actually, with some fantastic people. I got out and I got a job for 2 years. Oh, catch this out. I got a job touring federal penitentiaries in a small improvisational group.
Wow.
And we went around and we would stay in the prison compound for 6 to 8 weeks and do workshops and the small repertoire of shows with the prisoners and for the prisoners. And we had this one little van with all our props and wooden cubes, you know, that was our set. And we drove all over the country. And about a year and a half into that, I was standing in a theater. I had taken a day off and went to a local legitimate theater, and I was standing in the empty theater, and I just had this overwhelming feeling that I needed training. I wanted to be a classically trained actor. Without any real understanding of what that meant. I knew it was something other than what I was at the time. And so I fell into that really fundamental thing that you do in the US, which is you audition for graduate training programs. I think you know a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Maybe some people listening know about that. It's a little, you know, you get your monologue and you try to tart up your resume to look like you've done a lot, all of those things. And I did. I got into a couple of different programs, and I decided to go to a program in Philadelphia, rough town, but I liked it. I wasn't there for very long. About a year into that program, I went to a professional theater and was offered a job at a repertory theater. And it was my first experience being really seriously, after the improv company for 2 years, which was my first real professional job other than summer stock. I never questioned, never once, Fernando, that my guiding star, my North Star was always ensemble, was always company. I never thought about an individual solo career, going to New York, getting an agent, auditioning. And I really admire that, the courage, the tenacity, the sort of spirit one has to do that. I'm just so moved by that. For me, it was different. And it was about being in a group, the fundamental values and troubles that a group provides, but also the way you can begin to lean on it and build things upon a foundation that continually begins to solidify. And clearly my life has allowed me, and I've worked hard for it, to do that. So I got into this repertory company as a young artist, and it was through that repertory company that I was introduced to Mr. Suzuki. And when I met Mr. Suzuki and the Scott Company, my athletic career, my equestrian sensibility, and all the wisdom and all of the physical sensibility you need for that communication with another animal, and to jump over stuff and to go fast and try to win and to be excel. And because it had metrics, it had criteria, that finally came together in a very real way for me for the first time in the art of theater. And I began to lace together my history, shallow as it was, with my present in the theater. And that was another aha moment for me when I finally got over to Scott and began my career with them. And it was through Mr. Suzuki that we created City Company, out of his excitement and interest in the artists he was seeing coming out of the US. We were loud, we were tall, we were healthy, we were funny, we were brave. We didn't have a lot of skill sets, but we were game. And he was so good to us and got behind us and helped us establish what is now the City Company, which is in its 30th year. I don't know. We always argue when it really started, right? It's so hard to tell when something begins, the nascent moment. But we're in the 30th year, and I'm still an associate with Mr. Suzuki. Was just with him last summer doing King Lear. And last summer was really the Theater Olympics in Togamura.
Wow.
That extraordinary festival where I was playing Lady Macbeth in City Company's Radio Macbeth, and the week earlier I had played Goneril in Suzuki Tadashi's King Lear. And my life after those many decades, it was really, for me, whether I was successful at doing both of those at the same time, I don't think so, but that event for me was a big deal. It was a big milestone for me, and I was privileged by so many people to help that come to pass. And getting up really early every morning for 30 years and working hard.
Oh, it's so great to hear all these part of the story. I have to say that I saw you rehearsing the Radio M with City during my time at the conservatory. Then I saw you rehearsing also King Lear during the summer in Togamura.
That's
Because I was there
right.
too. So yeah, I kind of saw all this process, and you're telling us right now that, and yeah, I was there too. So our paths are crossing all the time in different places,
That's
and that's
exactly
so
right.
great.
Yeah.
What amazed me is that you are this part of the story that I didn't know about you, and how your career started and all that stuff. It's amazing. I mean, it's a life devoted to theater. I mean, it's actually a life devoted to theater.
Yes, and the privilege to do that, which I recognize more and more, the privilege. I didn't think about it at the time as, I felt lucky, and I felt, but I think I made a lot of assumptions that this was, I never questioned it. And certainly I was afforded that, that who I am, my circumstances economically and socially allowed me. But I really have, since that day I walked into the studio at the Milwaukee Repertory Theater in 1979, I have never been out of work. Not, never. Maybe now. So there's always new experiences. It's so interesting. And that too, that lacing together of one experience into the next event, and these two worlds in Togamura, and the profiting being around this extraordinary group called the Scott Company, and them gifting me with their values, their understanding of what it means to be the consciousness of the moment, and how you do that, and to contemplate how do you spend your time, as John Cage would say. It really comes down to how do you spend your time. And the Scott Company helped me formulate that, and then to bridge my life over in the US, in New York, centered with City Company, and understand that for me, my role was always, as Suzuki says, you're not training to be an actor, you're training to be a theater artist. And as you matriculate through that, the art of maturation through an experience of training, through the endurance of years inside of us, the same thing, the maturation process, or maturing as an artist, is that it becomes individualized, and you begin to see what theater artist means for you. And for me, it was some practical things. I wanted to be able to understand how to produce and how to administrate and how to cut a salary for my colleagues, how to write a grant, how to dramaturg a play, how to direct my colleagues, because that's how City Company works. We work very horizontally, as you know so well. And Anne allows the room to be that. She gives the space in the room for that to happen. So everyone is a dramaturg, everyone is a director, everyone is an actor, everyone is, in some sense, a sound designer, a set designer. And we share those roles, and the talking stick goes around and around and around. It's not, believe me, it's a blood sport. It's not all kumbaya. There's a rough and tumble in there. And the Scott Company is something incredibly elegant and rough at the same time, which is this idea of, I think when you make a contract that you're going to go into the theater, or it just emerges from inside you, and it is your life, it is what you do, like a divining rod, it's pulling you. I think you make a contract with understanding you're going to live in a complicated, complex state, because that's your job, and it's not going to have any kind of literality assigned to it. It's not going to have a black and white or a beginning and an end. When you deal with a human being, and all of the profound experiences we go through, all of those nanoseconds of consciousness that Shakespeare's trying to capture, or Euripides is trying to capture in these narratives. They're trying to capture these feelings of consciousness. You realize you have to find a way of living with that. For me, when I found the Suzuki training, here was made analog the idea of living inside of opposition, the idea of living with the complexity of the inner, the metaphysical world, and the outer, the physical world, the intimate and the infinite, and the explosive and the contained, the movement and stillness, if you will. And it never has ceased to astonish me for its depth and goodness. So that's a little bit about who Ellen Lauren is, and essentially a work in in progress.
Yeah. What can I say, Ellen? So thank you for all that story. It's amazing to see your journey, to be to see your journey through your words. So I would like to ask you, because some people here is already practicing the method, the Suzuki method, but there must be people who doesn't know really what is the method. So can you explain us or tell us what is the Suzuki method for acting?
Yeah, I will try. And certainly for everything I say, it's probably going to have an opposite truth that I'm not saying. As you
Mhm.
know, it's very, very, because it's preparation to make art. Essentially, it's a vocabulary to prepare yourself to to get your voice into the world and to curate that exponential energy created between the audience and the actor. You know, that the actor really curates that agreement and that cyclical exchange of energy, because it is dealing with these invisible forces. It's very hard to capture artistic preparation training, but in a practical sense, it's a vocabulary of sequences of movement that deal with the wholeness of the actor and restoring the wholeness of the body back into the theater, back. Uh, Certainly, as we pulled away, as our spaces became more technologically advanced, as the innovation of television and film, began prioritizing, you know, the upper half of the body, the mind, the brain, the emotional, psychological, intellectual capacities of the human being, the complexities of narrative, and began to assign so much of what we train and assess from one another in the upper body. But there is a deep, deep, primal, pre-modern history of the body in space, and the legs and the feet and the center of gravity, if you will, in connection to the earth, providing the platform or the surface against which you can push down to be, to exist, to be perceived by another human being, so that you can actually, through your connection to the earth, increase your capacity to get your message across to the audience. That means, yes, better breathing because of this vocabulary of training. This means your voice is stronger and more focused and has greater range and flexibility. It means that you have a certain physical prowess and ability to hold still, filled with energy. This is something that's crucial to the performing arts, and we don't have training that teaches us much about how to find that presence of stillness, movement inside of stillness, that quality of an athlete just before they leap from a diving board, that sats, as Odin would say, Eugenia Barba, or lifting the fingers over a keyboard just before launching into Rachmaninoff. Suzuki and Scott Company, the Suzuki Company of Toga, began to innovate and experiment with ways of moving the body and ways of putting pressure on the body. First with external forms, holding things, but then internally by paying heightened attention and consciousness to where the center of gravity is placed and how you control it. In daily life, we don't control our center of gravity because we can't think about it. We have to be functional in daily life. So the more unconscious you are, the more functional you are. But on the stage, the more conscious you are, the more believable you are. So it's a very interesting sort of equation. And so you're looking at the center of gravity, but you can't just get up and, you know, I can't just get up and walk and then sit down and learn much. So what you do is you take your center of gravity, you take your body and you put it up against these metrics or criteria of movement in which you're asked to move very quickly and hit very exact articulated distributions of where the center of gravity is, and then stop it. At the height of the movement, you're also putting the opposite pressure on it to stop, and not from tension and from shoulders and neck and constricting the voice and the face, but really by control, by heightened levels of energy. This comes about in looking at all of the great wealth of world drama that exists outside of daily life behavior. So you're bringing out of the body, not putting onto the body, small diagnostic tests to test the quality of your energy, the quantity of your energy. And then what you do with that energy is really up to the circumstances of your talent, of the narrative you're involved in, of your colleagues, of your director, right? So you have The Highway is the great classical play, and maybe the driver is the director, but the sports car is the actor. And you've got to be really fast and have great brakes, as Suzuki would say, and great steering, and you want to look nice. So Suzuki training is vocabulary of movement in the lower body, some fundamental, basic, foundational movement in it is connection to the earth through a stomping movement through the flat of the foot. This is universal through all cultures, all over the world, in terms of ritual, in terms of repetitive ritual movement to create an inner state, to connect with the community at large. You're creating a state inside of the body physically and metaphysically to connect and get your message across to as many people as possible in a shamanist sense, in an antiquity, in an antique way of describing it. Some of the movement is from world culture and innovated from Scott Company, but it is all about upsetting the center of gravity and restoring it and finding how closely together you can pull those two things. And it is a full range. It's not only explosive movement, it's durational movement, it's endure movement. It's the scale of it touches all the compass points in terms of what the human body can do. It deals with the verticality of the heavens and the connection through the center to the earth, but it also deals with a lateral, horizontal field of attention and perception. It deals with pulling focus in rather than exploding out, and upsetting the self and finding equilibrium in that unbalanced state. Being able to constantly be able to support the freest, openest voice as possible, targeted towards a specific distance and direction, which means ultimately good breathing. So it is anaerobic, it's explosive movement, but there's also aerobic, a sustained breath control about it. So you create a state, you upset yourself, you try to find control and stability and strength inside of that, and then you use that for expressive purpose, imaginative purpose, something a lot of people misconstrue about Suzuki training. Yeah, ultimately it's a creative process.
Yeah,
it's probably just like people are, what is it though? But it's group or individual movement, but it's done in a group, and a lot of different forms. But that's the formula, right? It's really lower body, keeping this free and light and open, long, getting air.
So it's I can see that like having three like important points: breath, center of gravity,
and energy.
And energy.
And energy, sustained energy, or increasing energy in the face of an obstacle, physical obstacle, but also, you know, there are all these invisible obstacles, your tenacity, right? The quality of your attention and concentration towards something. And as you do this training, you strengthen those things. You strengthen your inner muscles. You strengthen your ability to face off with a problem. Be that the problem, you know, for me, the Suzuki training is far exceeds the rehearsal studio, because there's always a problem. It might be your left knee. It might be you have no money. It might be a global pandemic. There's always a problem. And this training for me as a value system has taught that you don't back away from that. You look straight into it and pull all of your resources. And that's another really critical part about it's your breathing. It's your center of gravity. It's your energy. It's not every corps de ballet kind of everybody is the goal to look the same, or stylistically, it has nothing to do with being a Suzuki actor. It is a fundamental way of assessing the self, getting stronger, definitely, technically, practically, but getting stronger inside too, to do what you want to do. Be that videography or puppetry or standing on a stage and doing a Greek drama, a television film. It really lies underneath all of those things. It's not a style. Very, very individuated. And in some ways, the only way we can really truly see an individual is when we do attempt to do Hamlet. If we all attempt a Hamlet speech, we see how different each person is and what of that speech they're highlighting and their abilities with it. So the Suzuki training is criteria. It's very clear. And at the same time, the forms, the physical form, even though you get really, really ground down like in any ballet class, with the form needing to be mastered, as you so know, as we've taken many classes together, it has nothing to do with that at the same time. It's just nothing to do with that. So that's what you're cultivating are the feelings that lie behind and underneath the forms, and the feelings are what are applicable to your work. That you're trying to really, really cultivate feeling, because when we get on stage, you can either speak the written word or you can remember your body. But to speak the written word and remember your body and sensation while you're speaking is very, very difficult. It's not a mother tongue. You know, art isn't a mother tongue. It's something extraordinary. And this is something else Suzuki training provides, is that heightened physical sensibility while maintaining a connection to something outside. It's not narcissistic. And speak. And the word made flesh, as it's been said in the past, in many, many cultures, in different ways. You are the word. You are the message that the audience can press against. And so you're creating the energy of someone who would be saying what it is you're saying. You're not just expecting the words to describe who you are. You're creating the circumstances physically out of which those words would come. And if you're doing those great plays, whatever those are, from every culture, it demands something that we've allowed in some cases to go to sleep a little bit in our contemporary world. Technology, this idea of animal energy, this terminology Mr. Suzuki coined, which deals with human energy. It's something universally shared across cultures, across time, across gender, politics, is this essential quality of animal energy, as opposed to non-animal energy, which we also now need to survive and live, and is incorporated into our theater practices, certainly, multimedia and all. But how the living presence of the artist, if you strip everything else away, that's what you need. You need the actor and you need the audience. And that's theater right there. I'm sorry to all you directors and playwrights. I don't mean to be rude.
It's okay, Ellen. So I was thinking that we usually forget that all this training is for speaking at last. I mean, we move a lot, we prepare ourselves, our energy, and we are always trying to focus our energy to make a speech, to finally say the words. And sometimes we tend to forget that because it's so strong, the training, and the movement is also so energetic. Yeah, the quality of the speech with when we train with this method, it's also classic, as you said before. It's like a classic training, but it is not just for doing the big Greek plays. It's also for other kind of theater.
Yeah, I don't mean to interrupt you, Fernando. I just want to also say it's very contemporary training too. The burden of pulling the classic world from whatever that means into each one of us, of pulling the past, pulling the classics, and the issues of our contemporary moment and the future, and pulling those together. That burden of that rests upon the actor. When you stand on the stage reconciling the past, the present, and the future, it happens in us, in our bodies. And so the training is really addressing that as well. What does that mean on a practical sense? And what does it mean then to speak, make the digital information, the written word on the page? I've referenced Hamlet earlier, so let's say Hamlet. That's just digital information, making that analog. And that is the art of this training as well. Speaking, it's all about that. All about that. It gets forgotten, you're right.
Thank you, Ellen, for that. It's great to have this information. So some people is asking here if, because they are hearing about the method that they didn't hear it before, so they are asking if you are doing workshops, or I guess the question is, how did you adapt to the current situation with the training, teaching virtually?
Yeah. Well, I think like many, at first it was, at first we perhaps, I don't know if anybody else out there had this. There was a moment, just a confusion of how long is this, and what are we looking at here? How many weeks? Oh, how many months? Oh, what's happening? And so the the thought was just to wait until we could get back together. And then it became clear that if we wait, well, certainly time is passing. I'm just now, my skills are going down. I'm not, other than just running up and down my road or lifting my weights or something. But training is to prepare to make theater, and given the moment, it just felt like, oh well, we'll just wait. And then I had an idea that as the day approached, which would have been our city company's opening day at Skidmore, our summer program we do annually in June in Saratoga at Skidmore College, I thought, what if we created an online day to celebrate, and we try to train in our virtual world boxes, and we figured this out. And all, God knows, by then, that was June, early June, late May, early June, many people had to finish off their semesters from March through May teaching suddenly online, and the crisis of that. And I wasn't teaching at the time. I teach at Juilliard, but I wasn't teaching there that semester. We were out performing the Bacchae at the Guthrie when we were called off the road. So we were training every day, but I didn't have to immediately adapt. But I watched J-Ed at UCLA overnight have to teach online and be baffled. And so those for me were really the heroes early on in the pandemic. And then I wanted to try to figure this out, because I thought, as we all did, I'm not claiming ownership of this, in some sense, all you have to do, you still have a body, right? I'm looking at you in your box, you're looking at me, but we know you have a body. And so the act of imagination towards the other, the act of compassion, empathy, just has to amplify more. And then you get to work. And then you adapt to the parameters of your space. I'm very lucky here in my studio, but I've also been in my New York apartment teaching classes. I've also been in a kitchen teaching classes, and in a variety of small spaces where you can't be percussive on the floor and stomp. You can't make noise. You have to, and again, you're going after feelings. So you're taking the Suzuki training, and yes, we are really, really innovating how to adapt this training for as many artists as are out there and their environments. And it's, I dare say, despite the frustrations behind it, there's also something incredibly important about it, because it's, you have to be so clear about what it is you believe about this training to communicate it across the great electric. And that makes you reify what you know, and that makes you fresh. It teaches you all over again, as if from the beginning. Very nascent feeling. So I'm looking at it in a positive way. City Company has been teaching a drop-in class once a week to people. And then we, Leon, as you know, my colleague, Leon Ingelsrud in the City Company, innovated, because he's a tech whiz, with Keynote. He's presenting an introductory class where he's really illustrating and trying to capture what we would actually do in a studio, the rigor, the discipline, the form, the attention. And he adapted a lot of, through animations and illustrations. We have an introductory class, and we have a series of classes in January coming up for both intermediate, beginners, and experienced. I innovated a class with called Revolution Out Loud in this past autumn, which was about speaking, about speaker revolution. Obviously in the US, we were coming up on a big election, and it was time to speak your message. But the conviction, and I don't just mean a spiritual conviction, I mean a physical conviction and articulation, a physical literacy with idea, with argument, with a point of view, is something we have to keep practicing, because we still have a body, and we still have space, and we still have time. And it's still our job. it's still our job to be the consciousness for the moment, and to investigate and to sustain and to be a bridge and to be lively and to mess it up. So training has never been more important than now, I think. And yeah, I volunteered at the drama school Mumbai in the late summer and taught a 2-week course to beginning artists. It was an extraordinary experience, and I was so moved by understanding that desire and curiosity and energy and hunger still is there in the artist, in as their grandmother is passing it back behind them or their dog is jumping up and down. The artist inside that is still attempting to create a sacred space in which they're working for a limited time with you across the miles. And I learned a lot through those 2 weeks from those artists, and that gave me the courage to continue. And I've taught all semester at Juilliard, trying to embrace the opportunities it also affords. And also, I think it's something Akiko said, another colleague in the city company. She said, part why I train right now is online is I want to be ready. I want to be ready when those doors open, when we're allowed to go screaming back into our studios, because we can't here in the US yet. I want to be ready. I don't want to have, another 2 months to catch up. I want to be in good condition in every way, mentally and spiritually and physically. So it's critical to keep training.
To be ready,
Yes,
we are always training to be ready. That's something that I remember from Skidmore the first year that I was there, like 6 years ago. We are training for being ready all the time.
Be ready. You don't know when suddenly the moment. This is the moment. This is the moment. It's not. There are and everybody's take on this moment, I think, essentially, artistically, I don't mean politically, is legitimate. And if you need to, be more winter, if you need to winter, overwinter, and get still and silent, and I think that's incredibly important. That I went there a little bit. I don't go there too much, me, but I did in March and April, and it was very healthy for me to assess from different lenses and different points of view.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I want to tell you that Meher from the conservatory is here watching us.
Oh, Meher.
So she says, create the body that will say these words. Is something that I remember Ellen saying to us back when we were in the conservatory.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Create the body that would say the words. Because if you say, tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, without a body that would say that. And what is that body? Well, that's as individual and unique as you, as the person who speaks it. But the body has to create a very rare and special atmosphere and change space. That's what we do for the audience, isn't it? It's our gift. We change the space, the atmosphere, through the quality of our energy, as opposed to relying on technology, as opposed to relying just solely on technology to change the atmosphere. Yeah. So when those two things are together, it can be quite extraordinary.
Something very critical for training and for theater today, isn't it? I have another question, and I would like to know if you kind of know how did Mr. Suzuki get to create this training, because as you usually say there are different elements. It is not Japanese things, are different elements. How did he create or mix up all the elements to create the method?
Well, it's first of all, despite my 40 years with the Scott Company and having the great privilege and pleasure of Mr. Suzuki's company, I can't really speak for him, and anyone's personal, let alone artistic journey is just that. It's theirs to know. But the little bit that I can share is that it was the early Waseda Shogekijo, the earliest manifestations of the Suzuki Company, and later the Suzuki Company of Toga when they moved to Togamura in the Toyama prefecture on the other side of Japan from Tokyo. They were attempting to, it's the thing I've said before so many times, and Stanislavski says, they were attempting flight. They were trying to reach a goal that was incredibly rare and difficult. And so they needed the runway to get off into the air for flight. And they began to innovate. They wanted to get better. And their idea of better began more and more to be refined. And better meant pulling out of us what we each actually have, which is this extraordinary level of human energy, animal energy. But we also have the war, so to speak, with the earth by being connected to the heavens, by our intellect, by our emotional athleticism, by our psychology, our history. And so these two things compacting into the singular experience of an artist. And at the time, the Scott Company and Mr. Suzuki were experimenting in a very small spaces, and the heat and the intimacy of sharing that extraordinary level of energy and focus and concentration and almost exponential power of the human body in a very close proximity was very, very important in their experimenting how to draw this energy out of the body. They began to draw, certainly Japan has a very deep history of performing art training for the kabuki and the no and bunraku in theater form. And while Suzuki looks at those forms somewhat as mummified, in other words, you can see the body that used to be alive but is no longer. What he wanted to do was put the energy back into those mummies and draw out of them for a contemporary goodness and sensibility what he could, and leave the rest. Leave the museum qualities of them, leave the mummification behind, but pull out the stuff that was useful and valuable from his own culture, and then look at the wealth of world culture and draw from it, draw from Martha Graham, draw from martial arts, draw from modern contemporary dance forms, and then draw from each and every artist that was at that time in the Scott Company and their sensibility, their physical sensibilities, their talent, their taste and point of view, and each one of them imprinted their own way of being. And the training that we have now, which is and was by necessity somewhat regulated or codified so that it could be handed on to the new Scott members as they came in and took over roles in the repertoire. They needed a way to get on board, to get on into the air. So they codified these movements more and more and more over time as it became necessary to hand it on. I mean, this is the history of culture, that it's from one human being to another. I'm giving you this thing. You're going to change it by nature of who you are. Then you're going to hand it on. And then Ellen will hand it to Fernando, and then Fernando, and so on. And we form this long human chain. So Suzuki was pulling, and his artists, pulling from a wealth of world culture, and they were using what was productive, what was useful, what was creating frisson in the room, what was creating a huge problem, and yet exponentially explosive discoveries in the artists as they released into this work through the narratives, through also Suzuki's very special dramaturgy and how he was collaging texts together, which was a fairly new idea at that time. And you have to also look at Japan, recently post-war Japan, and what they were dealing with culturally, politically, societally. And they were making these incredible experimentations. It's really extraordinary. So it doesn't come from any one place. A lot of it is an imaginative act. A lot of it is the training, the performances on stage necessitated the training, so that the training was always in direct conversation and relationship to what they wanted to try to create on the stage, the atmosphere, the impression, the sonic quality, the physical quality, the extraordinary mise en scène and choreography. So if they wanted to create something, the entrance of the witches in Macbeth, they innovated training to be able to do that. And so it wasn't the other way around. The training was always linked to the making of the work, to the imaginative process of each individual artist. And like any good training, it comes out of the human experience rather than just a codification of formal movement. It really isn't movement. It's really, when you do the Suzuki training, you're putting on other people's bodies. You're putting on other people's right history, and you feel that as an artist. You feel the weight of those other people and the years, the decades, and then you feel your role in that. How to hold up under it and find your own personal contribution to it, and then you push it forward into the world. So it's, the development of any language criteria, it comes from so many inspirations. How Graham experimented with her work is a lateral exchange between her perceiving something from an artist she's watching do something she asked them to do, and that's changing her, and that's changing the artist. These languages that came and profoundly changed our world, Merce Cunningham, or the language of ballet in its time, or the language of music, and how it's tangible. When it comes to theater, we don't think of training as something to measure ourselves against. That we create, something to measure the seasons of one's life. But Suzuki training is just that. It's like a sundial. It doesn't move. You move. And you tell what o'clock it is. I've been doing it for 40 years, so I'm not any longer so strong and fast. But other things happen throughout the day. Other qualities of life, smarter, maybe more graceful, maybe more powerful in a different way. Some of my favorite actors in the Scott Company have always been the older members who just look like fine cognac on stage, and just can blow the youngest member away with their power and concentration and voice and humor. There's always humor in there.
Yeah, there is. Well, Ellen, as I said before, I'm very happy hearing you. It's like being back in New York for a moment,
Me too. It's so good to see you and be with your community. I'm so grateful.
Thank you very much, Alan, for that. Well, there is people from all around watching us right now, from Mexico,
Oh,
from Chile, from different countries right now. And yep,
yeah,
as
we've
we
got
are,
our torches. We're waving, not drowning, waving, waving
yeah,
to each other. There's a poet,
yeah,
Stevie Smith. She says, not drowning, waving. Or maybe she
waving.
says, not waving, drowning. No,
Well,
we're waving.
as we are approaching like the end of the conversation a little bit, or slowly, I would like to ask you like a couple of things more. And you're already giving us a lot of advices, but can you give us an advice for the upcoming times and theater
Mm,
practice? It's so hard and everything is unknown right now, but
yeah.
with your experience, you can for sure.
Yeah. Uh, oh, that makes me feel um, responsible and old, but as if I
I'm
could
sorry.
give anyone advice. I mean, we certainly are in this all together. Sometimes I wake up in the morning and I think all over the world, not just my company or New York or US, all over the world, that those nights, now more theaters are open, I know, in some communities in Australia and in Singapore, for two examples. But all over the world in those early nights in March and April, every theater was dark. And I thought how we are all in this together. But I would say there's pleasure to be gained. There really is. There's pleasure. And to first and foremost, don't get stopped by the problem of it. It's That's very real. It's very frustrating and it can threaten to overwhelm. Um, but if the training teaches us anything, and if you have a particular interest in it, you have to use it right away. You can't, well, I'm studying this and somewhere down the road I'm going to use it or it will help me when I actually am an act. No, you are, and it's still an act of theater, of performance. Um, be formal and rigorous with yourself as best as you can and forgiving when you can't be. Um, it's it's what I hope when I lead a training session is that you can push against me across the miles. You can push against me. I will not break. I am there to ask you to create something larger in your heart and your body and your mind than you experience throughout the rest of the course of the day, perhaps. In service to the fact that we are responsible to this moment as artists. That hasn't, we're not getting um, you know, a ticket that allows us to wait. We this is we still have that job, whether we have lost our ability to be paid for it, we've lost our studios, or not. Um, I understand that and have enormous empathy for it, and I'm going through some of that myself. But it's still my job. um, as until I hang up the definition of myself as a theater artist, and then my job perhaps will be something else. But I would say there's pleasure to be gained in that. You have to turn up your imaginative, empathetic muscles through this Zoom thing. But I think it's possible. I think it is a rigorous practice. And I think once you identify what it really makes you identify what in terms of Suzuki training, what it is you're going after. And then the game is the adaptable how you adapt to get at those feelings, to get at that quality. And you can still be critical, right? That still looking for the critical information of what is going well, but what isn't. Like, don't get hung up on, oh, the fact that I trained online and so I feel good about myself. Maybe you need that once in a while, but overall training is to get better. And if training is to get better, it means that you have things that aren't going well. You know, they may change. There's always, but it doesn't matter how old you are or where you are in your career. There's always something that's going wrong. Damn it. And you can look at that, but look at
Training
it
is
with
like a
great,
doctor.
yes, exactly. And look at it with hope, with great hope. I do think we're all going to be bottlenecked up once the theaters begin to open more and this vaccine allows us to be in rooms together. I'm not the first to say it. Many people are saying the basic things, which is theater, you know, it's not broken, it's not going to go away. And I know companies are struggling. I know my own company is looking for answers and changing and transitioning, transforming. But, you know, ever since the dawn of theater, it was about inspiring hope. It was about making the present moment better and examining the present moment and looking at the culture and society that we were in the moment, and questioning how to organize ourselves to make it better. How do we be better in existence? And that is still as present as ever. Celebrate those who are in rooms and studios together right now, right on. Yay. I celebrate that. I take great solace from knowing I have a colleague opening a show in a week in Australia. Wow. I know. I'm so proud of her. But you know, we still it's still our charge to make an audience feel useful. And there are many ways of doing that. For me, one of the ways of doing that is to do the training that I've devoted my life to. And that group of people called the Scott Company and Mr. Suzuki, and what they gave me was, yes, movement, but they gave me a value system of how to think about what it means to be a theater artist. And then if you define that for yourself, then you know how to get ready for it. And getting ready for it for me was the Suzuki training and ultimately the Viewpoints training with my company, City. So I'm very fortunate. And I stumbled around in the dark a lot, as we are all in this moment. But there's pleasure to be gained from it. I don't mean to sound too simplistic. And keep talking to one another like this, like you're providing this forum for us to come out of our dark houses and wave and go, yeah, I'm in there too. Yeah, keep awesome. And go back and work away. It's worth it. I know it's worth it. It is, and it's our job. Make the audience feel useful, however they have access to us.
Yeah.
It's not really practical, is it? Other than theater is also ritual and repetition. It's some of the ingredients, like a recipe. So you have to find new ritual, whatever that is. I'm a big one for that. It helps me with my discipline. Find the ritual, however simple or complex it is, and repeat it. Repeat it. Repeat it in the way that it wakes itself up. It dies and then it wakes up again. in terms of repetition, in terms of repeating something. In a John Cage sense, you repeat something to know what it is, to know what that is, to know what that is. And in this Zoom context,
Ellen, are you there? We can't hear you any longer. Or probably we have a kind of connection problem. That's something that happens all the time. So you're frozen right now. Oh, well, bueno, perdimos a Ellen, posiblemente tuvimos un problema de conexión y claro, se perdió esta conexión. Debo decir que esta conversación es inspiradora. Bueno, he estado estudiando con él en los últimos 6 años en tiempos diferentes, en programas distintos, y por supuesto escuchar todo lo que tiene para decirnos y enseñar es fundamental. Les recomiendo que para conocer más sobre City Company, porque veo que César de México nos pide bibliografía, and I also want to say hi to Christopher, who's on Facebook. Para Christopher, un abrazo, amigo, que es de los Estados Unidos. Pueden buscar información sobre City Company en su sitio web, que es www.city.org. Allí está el blog de Ann Bogart y también de los distintos miembros de City Company, donde hablan sobre el entrenamiento tanto de Suzuki como de Viewpoints, que es este otro entrenamiento del cual en este programa no hemos hablado aún, pero que en la próxima temporada vamos seguramente a tener algún invitado hablando sobre esto. Además de esta página de sitio.org, hay un libro en especial en inglés que es Remaking American Theater, creo que ese es el nombre, que es un libro que habla sobre el teatro de City Company y su proceso de creación. Entonces, sí, el libro de hecho se llama Remaking American Theater, Charles, Me and Bogart and the City Company. Es un libro grande que habla sobre City y sobre su proceso de creación. Hi, Ellen, you're back.
I'm so sorry. I live in a small town and electricity just dipped out. So I'm so sorry.
Don't worry, it's okay.
It's perfect.
I was answering some questions because people was asking about bibliography to read more about City and everything, and I was advising this Remaking American Theater book, this big one.
Yeah, Scott Cummings.
Yeah, and also to visit the City website where you have, I mean, all the City Company have blogs and of course.
Yeah, beautiful.
And talking about that, I would like to ask you about the future of City Company. If you can tell us a little bit about that, because you said already that you have some virtual drop-in and programs. If people want to find you there, they can see more information at their website. Really?
Yes, we have a drop-in class for right now for people with experience, even. Not a great deal of experience, but the drop-in is really for if you're familiar with the languages of both Suzuki training and the Viewpoints training. But on January 11th, we're filled up at this point. What we do, we're offering a 2-week introductory course online and also a 2-week beginner intermediate course. The beginner intermediate course, we may add another class because there's such a strong response. And then at the end of January 25th, I think, we begin an experienced class. We have both a morning and an evening to try to help people from different time zones. And more programming coming up as we are moving into the coming winter, spring season, we are formulating our class roster. And then in the summer, we will, at this point, of course, we're all waiting to know what's going to happen, but essentially we are moving forward with our Skidmore program in June, which is a four-week program, whether that's going to be a virtual distance learning or in person. We're in conversations about. It's, as for everyone, a little bit of a moment-to-moment reality for the health and well-being of everybody. And then City Company is also engaged in, we're currently all writing chapters of our book that finally the pandemic has helped us finally get off our butts and each begin to write. And we're involved in a legacy program. We're going through our archival work and getting that in order, which is a huge endeavor, as you can imagine, after 30 years. But if you go to the website, the training is all listed there, and you can sign up and you can write training at city.org, and I or Jonathan will answer. Jonathan is my right-hand person and helpful in all of our training programs. And we hope certainly in the coming year to be able to once again begin our residencies around the world. We're just waiting on all the different governments and our own. So there's a lot. We're doing a lot. We're doing a lot.
We are already waiting for you here.
Yes, I can't wait. I wanted to be with you there for years. And
yeah, so
and meet your company. Yeah.
Hopefully this pandemic ends soon, so we can have you in our studio stomping together.
Yeah.
Sharing time and space again.
Yeah, sharing time and space.
Ellen, I thank you a lot for accepting this, for sharing your thoughts, your experience, your time, for talking about this passion that we both share, called Suzuki method and training and all that. And also, thank you for always being there. I mean, you mean a lot for me, for my artistic career, and I will say to you always, thank you very much. This end of the year is amazing because you were here with us during this time, and thank you, Ellen.
Oh, it means so much to me, Fernando. You know, the opportunity to speak things that one believes allows one to find out what one believes. The opportunity to be asked because you care. And because we both equally care about something so deeply, and we're both working so hard to help one another. And I mean that to everyone who's listening right now, the fact that you're here, we're all doing it together. I'm just another table leg holding up the table. And to be picked out and asked what I think about things is a privilege, and I'm humbled by it and by your friendship. And to all of you out there, I can only say I cannot wait to meet you personally, professionally. We will. And Fernando, thank you. I can't wait to talk to you again soon, sooner than later.
Yeah.
And all best for the 2021.
Yeah, all this for you too. Thank you. And if there is any City Company member there, I love you all too. Thank you very much.
And their love. Yeah, we're lining up. We have to have a few more days, and then we start back to all of our meetings and all of our grappling together. We did a Three Sisters rehearsal in December online with a company we're working with in 9 Years Theater in Singapore.
Singapore, yeah.
Yeah, we hope we'll be able to do that. We don't know, but we're moving forward. So yes, anybody, reach out. We're here for you. We're here to support you. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you, Lynn.
I'm sorry about my electric.
Don't worry. It's okay. There is no problem. Really.
It's kind of
Thank you very
perfect.
much, Ellen. Y para todos y todas quienes estén allí escuchando, muchas gracias por acompañarnos en este último programa de prácticas corporales durante este año 2020. Nos veremos seguramente en el próximo año en un nuevo programa. Hay muchos más temas de los cuales no hemos hablado, de otros entrenamientos. La misma City Company que trabaja con Viewpoints es algo que no hemos conversado y que posiblemente lo haremos el próximo año. Muchas, muchas gracias. Que sea un buen fin de año. Bye, Ellen. Adiós a todos. Buenas tardes.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.